Hey guys, welcome to the October garden tour. I'm out here on a warm and windy fall day, and as you can see, fall has arrived here in Maryland. We've got lots of color in the trees and lots of pine needles falling and leaves. And I was just thinking how much I appreciate my white pine. Every fall, I'm so grateful for all of this free mulch. Let me show you. I just rake it over to my beds and I have this wonderful pine needle mulch. It's just beautiful. Here's a little pretty corner of my woodland. I have some of my euonymus cuttings. Some of them are in standard form. I have a Alberta spruce topiary right there. This one, I love this pot. It's underplanted with mum cutting and some beautiful parsley growing in there. I have a feeling it was a pot that was next to a pot of parsley and it just seeded itself in there. But boy, I think that's a gorgeous combination. I'll have to remember that and try to do it on purpose next year. And then the alyssum, ever since it's gotten cooler, has been doing really well in all my pots. And that is another probably 3 or 4 year old darker green euonymus standard that I've created just from a cutting. So I'm pretty happy with this corner of all topiaries, and most of them were cuttings. And right past this topiary here and mums, I have this heuchera plant. This is a really dark variety, and I absolutely adore it, and I really like how it looks in this faux terracotta pot. I like the color combination. So sometimes your accidental arrangements are really pleasing, especially this one. This is not something I planned to have all together, and I just love how it looks. There's a little bee enjoying some flowers here. These are ones that I already pulled out. They weren't looking so great in the pot, but when I noticed that the pollinators are still enjoying it, trying to show you this cute little buzzy bee. So adorable. But the bees have really adored the coleus flowers. And although they were starting to really look wilted and I did pull them out, I didn't want to take them away from the pollinators, like this bee over here that's still buzzing around gathering some nectar. I do have a pretty pot over here. These were some Dusty Miller that were in a smaller pot, and they kept wilting because the soil was spent. So once I pulled out the elephant ear from this big pot, I moved these up here, and sometimes in Maryland they'll overwinter if you don't have a harsh winter, but we'll see. If they don't, at least I'll enjoy them for another couple of weeks. Next to it, I do have some mum cuttings, and they didn't get much attention this year, but they bloomed anyway. So I'm really appreciating them. I'm excited that my cardboard path is finally going to be covered with leaves. I do this every couple of years to keep a pathway here and keep the weeds at bay, and the leaves just do a really great job at covering it up. And I even dump extra leaves on here, but it's nice that it's finally getting covered by the falling leaves. My friend gave me the most beautiful grasses. It's called Blue Arrows Juncus. And it is it's a little bit droopy now, but it normally grows in a quite straight structure, although I think this looks very graceful. But she gave those to me, so I put them in this pot, and they are a perennial grass. And I've surrounded them with these beautiful purple pansies, so I think that'll be pretty. I don't buy too many flowers this time of year, but I do always try to put a couple of pansies around the garden because they're so cheerful, even in the winter, but certainly in early spring. Over here I planted some leeks. You can see under the leaves some leek bottoms right here and right here. So I'm hoping to get some leek greens over the winter. This has turned into a very pretty pot with the lavender and the purple Tradescantia. I think it's very pretty. This Tradescantia actually overwintered last year. I was very shocked, and I did take cuttings to bring in just in case this one doesn't last, but it's just a pretty combination. The bluish green with the purple, I really like how that came out. And by the way, guys, I'm in the process of, when I redo my containers, I'm lifting them up somehow. And in this case, I've used some blue plastic pots. I think it looks kind of modern, and that way the roots won't come up into the containers like I've had a problem with before. Kind of fun. And then in this bed where all the leaves are falling, I have some lieutenant broccoli. It's looking quite vigorous. I think it's taken well. I put these in about a month ago, and they're marching down the middle of this bed. I also have some purple sprouting broccoli here in the front, and I grew those from seed. So I have 3 that look decent. They might turn out to work out, but you know, I think this year I really realized that if you buy plant starts, you're ahead of the game. And I think that the larger plants will be hardier. And then over here, I just did a video on this. I did plant some green onions from the grocery store, and I just chopped the tops off. But I'm hoping to get nice bunches of onions and onion greens throughout the winter and spring. And over here I have more of a random variety. I have some red sorrel that planted itself, probably part of the compost. And I have some very small I think it's called Mitcheville cabbage. I always say it wrong, but it looks more like a Chinese cabbage. I have a few of those. This is one set of beets, so I'm not going to get too many beets. And I do have a few rutabaga plants back here that have been chewed up by some type of bug. My black-eyed Susan vine here in the polytunnel bed has been putting out some beautiful blooms in October, but it's sort of at the end of its run. But they're so interesting. They just sort of have a black hole in the middle. But I'm excited to say I think it's been producing seed pods, which have been bursting open, and I'm excited to see if any of the seeds that drop germinate. And back here behind the rustic garden bed, I have redone another one of my containers. As you can see, I have some more colorful plastic pots as risers there, so roots don't grow up into my tubs anymore. And these are some collard green starts. So they make wonderful additions to the compost, and I think it's really important to have nutrition growing in your garden throughout the winter. You never know when you need a little vitamin boost. And I put a log there to kind of hold in the moisture. So we haven't had a lot of rain, and I think that really helps. This was the original chrysanthemum I took the cuttings from that are up near my polytunnel. So this has been a good variety in my garden. And sometimes mums do really well for me, and sometimes they don't. It's all a matter of finding what does well for you in your gardens, in your climate, in your conditions, and with your care. So this one is a winner. The rustic garden bed is looking pretty empty, but it's been mulched by the trees back here, and another white pine has thrown its needles down for mulch. So there's a job I don't need to do back here. I do, however, need to take care of all these leaves, and all of these leaves will stay on the property, guys. I don't like to send my leaves off in trucks with gasoline. I like to use it as a resource for mulch and to let it break down for leaf mold. I decided to put my penstemon back here. I don't have very good luck growing vegetables back here. It's dappled shade at times, and I think vegetable plants need a lot more sun in order to fruit. But I do think it is enough sun for a flowering perennial. I think it'll be really nice to have that natural looking flower back here in the woodland. And over here, beside the rustic garden bed, I do have a big tub, and that one is resting on top of logs. And this one is filled with horseradish, but it has sort of a prehistoric quality when it's really growing strong, and I think that it's a really nice addition of broad foliage for the garden. So we'll see how it looks next year. I'm noticing that some of these new leaves are serrated, and the older leaves are completely different looking. So if anybody knows why that is, if you have any experience with horseradish and know why that's happening here in the fall, let me know what you think. This garden back here next to the shed is a very tranquil spot. I really love it. I call it my Zen Garden. I have a few black metal elements. I do have a bistro set right here. And I just put these things together. Sometimes I like to just play with things. This is an old pot, and it's 2 wire baskets that I had put together years ago. And I realized if I weighed it down with one of my homemade concrete weights, that it could be a nice little garden element here. So I think that looks nice and adds a little touch of structure there. But everything is kind of winding down for the season. And here we are looking back at the house. And as winter approaches and the plants die back, I'm always grateful when I have these little pops of color in the garden. I can continue to enjoy these year round. And they just add a touch of whimsy. My hellebore that my friend Lori gave me is still doing well. I made an effort to come up and water it at regular intervals throughout our horrible summer, and I think it's survived just fine. Hopefully it's really set some roots down, and I'm hoping that it blooms for me next spring. Although I can see it needs a bit of water, this is still a pretty little corner. I did take out the elephant ear from that bigger container, but as you can see, the heuchera here are just performing beautifully. And I have a lovely boxwood round topiary with some alyssum and some purslane, which planted itself. That's kind of a pretty plant. And the coleus is still trucking along in this container. So I'm going to give everything a good water, I think, this afternoon. And here's a little look at the topiary garden. It's got a lot of alyssum growing throughout. And just the blue pots themselves make me so happy. I did fertilize about a month ago my wonderful topiaries, but I think in the spring they're all going to get a root pruning and some fresh soil. I'm also thinking that I need some pot risers for these plants to give some of them more elevation and make it a little bit more interesting. So I'll be working on that. And of course, those are my beautiful new cast iron urns. Let me show you what I put in there temporarily. For now, I dug up some autumn joy sedum, and they could look better, but I think they work for now. They are an autumn plant, and they're just kind of dramatic, especially since they lost many of their lower leaves due to the drought. But they make a nice statement, and I think I'm going to enjoy changing these out each season. These are my largest topiaries here, right over next to the deck. And they're all doing well. They're covered with pine needles at the moment. I've still got a magnificent cordyline plant here and some calabricoa. This is a pretty long-lasting arrangement, and it's actually looking better now than it did in the heat of the summer. So I'm going to have to think about maybe bringing that cordyline in. I don't have any experience with that, but it's always worth a try. I still have my beautiful canna lily plants outside. I have lifted a lot of my tender bulbs, but I'm waiting on these. I'll be watching the weather carefully because I do want to bring them in and save them for next year. We've enjoyed them so much. But it's always a balance this time of year. You want to bring your plants in before the cold weather, but you also don't want to deprive the pollinators of a nectar source. And these are still producing beautiful flowers. So it's really hard to pull them when they're at this stage. Something like this, if it were in my front yard, would of course be removed, but the bees are also still enjoying this, so I'll let them have it. And I just want to show you how small the blooms are. This plant, of course, knows it's at the end, can sense all of the temperatures going down at night especially, but look at how tiny these little zinnias are. It extends this season just a bit for those bees that are still foraging, bees and pollinators. And I did want to show you, although it looks a little messy with the laundry basket on top, that all of my garlic sprouted. We planted this together and rooted it for a few days before I planted it. But all of the greens have come up, and they're feeding the bulbs underneath, the garlic bulbs. So hopefully that means I'll get bigger bulbs next year. We shall see. But I did also want to point out that my homemade compost must have been full of tomato seeds, and all of those have sprouted. And am I going to weed them? No, I am not. They will die with the first frost, and they will just become green manure. They're just going to add nutrients to my soil. So I'm not going to worry about that at all. And I'm just very excited to see that my garlic is all growing and obviously rooting in. And I'm going to put this laundry basket back on because we do have lots of squirrels that are busy burying their acorns. It's always nice when your neighbor's bushes give you such beautiful color peeking over the fence. And I'm pretty pleased with the long border. It's looking neat and interesting. And I'll take you over here for a closer look at my autumn Anthem Miscanthus. And the autumn Anthem Miscanthus is just magnificent this time of year. All the beautiful plumes it puts up catch the light on a sunny day in the most beautiful way, and they just sway in the breeze. I'm so happy to have this plant. It is just a showstopper in the garden, in the fall especially. I hope that the camera is catching the magnificence of these beautiful plumes. So guys, thanks for joining me on my autumn tour. I hope you're enjoying your fall gardens and having fun jumping in your leaf piles. There's certainly no shortage of them around here. And I'll see you next time.